Welcome to Learning from Home. Our lesson today is reproduction of flowering plants. Life cycle of plants. Mature plant can carry flowers. The flowers are transformed into fruits. Fruits have seeds. Each seed is transformed into young plant through a process called germination. Parts of a flower. Flowers represent the reproductive organs of a flowering plant. What are the parts of a flower? Petals, sepal, stamens, stigma, and ovary. Each part of the flower has a specific function. Petals may be brightly colored to attract insects. Sepals protect the unopened flower. Stamens. Stamens are the male parts of the flower or the male organs of the flower. Stigma and ovary are the female organ of the flower. Stamens. The male parts of the flower each consist of an anther held up of a filament. Anther produce male sex cells or pollen grains. These yellow powder are the pollen grains. They are the male cells. Pistil. Pistil is the female organ of the flower. It consists of stigma, style, and ovary. Stigma, the top of the female part of the flower, which collects the pollen grains. Ovary, produce the female sex cells contains in the ovules. We have two types of flowers: complete flowers and incomplete flowers. First type is complete flower. Observe this flower. It carries stamens and pistil at the same time. In the same flower, I can see the stamens, and the stamens, we know the stamens are the male organs of a flower. They carry the pollen grains, the male sex cells. And in this flower, I can see the pistil. The pistil is the female organ. It carries the ovules, female sex cells. So this flower is a complete flower. Why? Because it has the male reproductive organs and the female reproductive organs, stamens and pistil. What about incomplete flower? Incomplete flower, we have two types: female flower and male flower. The female flower, I see the pistil only. It has pistil only. It doesn't have stamens or male parts. And The male flower carries the stamens. We have both of flowers are incomplete flowers. Example, the squash. Male flower carries the pollen grain and doesn't have pistil or female parts. And this is the female flower. It carries only the pistil. It doesn't have the pollen grains or stamens. The female part or the ovary will be transformed into a fruit. So the female flower will be transformed into the fruit or squash, but the male flower cannot be transformed into a fruit. First process, this process is very important, it's the pollination. Pollination is the transfer of the pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma. Pollination is the transfer of the pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma. The butterfly carries the pollen grains from a flower to another flower. A butterfly carrying pollen grains lands on the pistil of a flower. The bee carries the pollen grains from a flower to another flower. How? First step, pollinator or bee. A pollinator can be a bee or a butterfly or other flying insects. Visits flower and collect nectar. Pollen is rubbed on pollinator's body. Pollinator carries pollen on its body to another flower. Pollen is deposited on the stigma in the process. Second step, the fertilization. What's the definition of fertilization? Before the definition, when a pollen grain reaches the pistil, it sticks on the stigma and causes a pollen tube to form. The pollen grains enters to the ovules. The pollen tube finds its way down through the pistil until it reaches the ovule in the ovary. Fertilization takes place in the ovary when the sperm joins with the ovule to produce a fertilized egg. In the ovary, we have the fertilization. Fertilization takes place in the ovary when the sperm joins with the ovule to produce a fertilized egg. This fertilized egg is transformed into seeds, and the ovary is transformed into fruits, or one fruit. This is the fertilized egg. Last step is maturation of fruits. What happens to the flower after the formation of fertilized egg inside the ovary? This is the flower. Flower after fertilization. Petals wither. Ovary begins to swell. Petals drop off. Seeds develop inside the fruit. Fruit grows bigger.